gentlemen, the Uncutt Podcast.
I know what you're thinking. There was no one here doing the thing. Matt's not smoking a bowl. It's a whole thing. It's just me. I think they're paying me back for missing last week's show. But by the way, when you guys listen to this, great interview with Sam Houston last week, boys. But it is your boy, the Ace Nick White. I guess I'm running it alone unless Matt shows up. We'll see what happens. I'm actually super looking forward to this because this is my hometown show that we're talking about tonight. We're talking about Southern Underground Pro's New Direction event. Dude, coming off the madness that was the show back in January. Oh, God, I'm horrible with dates. I'm sure Dillon will correct me when I get him in here. But our guest tonight is going to be Dylan Hales. And let's cut to the video made by our boy, TJ Vegas, straight out of the Indy movement. It's up there. I never point the right direction. Oh, this is going to go great.
Makabe finds a counter. Look at this maneuver.
TJ Vegas killing it again. Dylan, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me. That video was good. Great video.
Dude, TJ is the man. Like he is
like better than anything I got to say.
I'll make sure to send it to you. Make sure to throw it up on the
please do.
Dude, that's why we pay him. So but man, it's great to have you on. So we'll start with kind of give me a little bit of the idea on your background in Southern Underground Pro, what brought you to the company, and your roles now.
Well, I guess I'll start off by commenting on that with two things. Number one, I apologize if my eyes are shifting all over the place because as we record this, Wrestling Open is still going on here on IWTV, which is in fact my job. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on that stream on the side as we chat here about New Direction. But as far as my background, I think it's worth noting. So even though we haven't really advertised this show as the 5-year anniversary show, this show is the 5-year anniversary show. I think to the day. The first show might have actually been on April 17th. So I'd need to double check, but I'm on the date of the Battle of Bone Storm. But of course, that took place at the Cobra. But it's been a 5-year journey. And when I started off at SUP, SUP itself was sort of a weird story. It's not like a lot of other promotions. It very much was some friends wanted to do a wrestling show, and they wanted to do the wrestling show with their other friends, and they wanted to do it in a sort of atmosphere that was more consistent with their own background, as like hardcore punk rock kids and stuff like that. And the first show was at the Cobra, also in East Nashville. Second show was there as well, as outdoors. But we've been at the Basement East since the third event, which I believe was in August of 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So that's been the sort of path there. But my particular path was, when we first started, it was like, I think it's fair to say that when the promotion launched, like, my opinion was being asked on like, oh, what about this guy or what about that guy? But I wasn't really involved in booking per se of the first show, at least in advance, other than just sort of talking to Koo and Jesse a little bit here and there about like guys that I had a particular opinion about or what I thought about something or this, that, and the other thing. I was just supposed to do commentary on the first show, and was excited to do it. I kind of was begrudgingly doing commentary. Jesse was sort of begrudgingly doing ring announcing on that show, by the way. That, like, both of us were just like, sure, I guess we'll do this. And before the show, there were some little things involving like things on the matches and some stuff that we were thinking about. And at the time, we really didn't, there was no second date. There was no like, okay, we're going to run our second show on this day. The thought process was this might be the only show. We didn't know. I mean, we kind of figured that we'd do another show, but it was nothing planned at all, nothing hard or concrete at all at that moment. So there wasn't a lot of long-term thought put into certain stuff. And I gave some thoughts at the time about some small things. And before I knew it, I was helping book and do some stuff on that show. And that just sort of went forward from there with a higher degree of involvement, starting in June on the next show, the outdoor show at Cobra. And then, before I knew it, I was fully on board as a booker. I mean, I don't even know how to put it because it's more of a collaboration. I don't really consider any of the team to be the sole booker or the sole promoter. That's never really been the spirit of what SUP is. But it definitely was like a process where, these are my friends and we're doing a show as friends, and the team is just sort of the team, and that's the way it is. So kind of an unusual trajectory for me, not at all what was I think originally planned in February, March of 2017 when things started to get rolling. But here we are 5 years later.
Yeah, man, it's been really wild to watch it, like both like from the outside, watching it on IBTV and being at shows, just watching how much it's grown and how it's like this cult thing here in Nashville.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, I remember at the last show, literally the Titans game let out, and you could just see all the people that had just left the Titans game just filtering in, like right before I think it was right after intermission, and just all these blue jerseys start walking in, and I'm like, well, if I had to know that was an option. Anyway.
No, that's a real thing that's happened from the very beginning. I mean, we've talked about it before, myself and Koo and Jesse and Brittany, we, like, all of us have joked about before how like there have been many shows where right before bell time we're like, God, house isn't so great tonight. That's too bad. Or this afternoon, really. That's not. And then somewhere between 5 minutes before bell and halfway through the first match, the room gets totally full, and you're like, oh, it's okay. Like it's just kind of the norm there. I don't know, man. Basement East is a very unique atmosphere for a pro wrestling show. I don't really think there's anything quite like it venue-wise on the Indies. Not that there's not other great venues on the Indies, but I just think it has a very unique feel. I don't think it's quite like any other place.
I think in terms of just being like a small venue too, like by comparison.
Sure.
I mean, there's still 200-300 people in there probably, once it packs out. But, just that small venue, everybody's standing, everybody's crowded around the ring. Because by the time it fills up, there's not like room for the boys to have room at ringside. You're having to just clear out. It definitely has, like, I think we talked about this before we started, like it has that rock concert, like you said, hardcore punk kind of feel where like, we're all here for a reason, and like let's watch a fucking fight, basically.
Oh, it's very communal atmosphere. It's I've said this and I'll always say this, like SUP is one of the very small handful of independent promotions that I think you could take somebody who's really a complete non-wrestling fan to, and they could probably enjoy it. I don't think there's that many that you could say that about. Now, I do think indie wrestling by its nature is a little bit more inviting than big-time wrestling to people who are total novices, at least in certain respects. But SUP is on a very short list. Freelance might also be on that list, maybe, perhaps beyond. There's a few feds maybe where if you've never been to an indie show in your life and you didn't really even care about pro wrestling, I think you could come to a SUP show and enjoy it.
So in the 5 years that SUP's been running, what are some of your favorite memories, favorite matches, whatever you want to go with?
Boy, there's a ton. So memory wise, I think it's difficult to hone down to any single match. A lot of my favorite memories, honestly, related to SUP are just like moments that me and the team have, like in the green room before the show, where we're mapping out something last second, and everybody's like, "Oh, what if we did this?" Like it's me, it's me, Jesse, Brittany, Koo, Dom. Sometimes Brett Eisen would be in there, or AC, or some of the other like major, like those to me are like oftentimes the things that I think of first when I think of SUP, because it's so exciting when everybody's like, oh my God, we're going to do this. It's going to be so cool. And then sometimes it works great. And sometimes you're like, but it's still funny. You don't even care. So that's part of it. But like, as far as matches and sort of tangible moments that fans themselves were also a part of, there's a lot of those. I mean, I think Marco beating Dom for the title and the way that happened was like a super cool moment that I think got a big reaction, and I think was sort of a transition moment in some ways for SUP. I think that kind of changed the trajectory for a lot of things in the promotion at that point. I think Koo wrestling Hot Sauce Tracy Williams for the IWTV Championship long time ago. To me, I think that was a pivotal match in Koo's career. I think it sort of changed his trajectory as a wrestler. And I always think back to that match as like a really, really important match that I think felt special in the building, because even though I don't really think very many people thought Koo was going to win, the fact that he was up at that level and the way it came across, I think vested that match with a lot of importance, and was kind of a career-changing moment for Koo. So that's like, personally, that's up there for me. That would be pretty high on the list. Brett Eisen versus Alley Cat is still, in my opinion, probably my favorite SUP match of all time. From Those Who Fear Tomorrow. I that whole show's great. I mean, the insane tag team title bloodbath with Marco and Cabana Man Dan versus Violence is Forever is also on that show. And Jaden versus, I believe, Jeremy Wyatt is a really good match that's also on that show. But the Alley and Brett, to me, is like, that's like a magnum opus. I think that is as smart a wrestling match as you'll ever see. That's one of my favorite matches that I've ever been able to do commentary for. It's one of my favorite things that, I've ever really been able to be party to. And then, even though it was sort of weird because it was closed set, being back in the building after the building was built back after the tornado wrecked it, and being able to do the closed set tapings, that was huge. That was like a super cool moment. And in a way, even though I would have loved for us to have fans that day, in a way it was kind of cool that it was just us. Like, I like, in a way that was kind of cool. So
I watched that show. I have a buddy from New Zealand who actually listens to this podcast, and we both watched the show on the same day. The one with the gauntlet match.
Oh yeah, that's my perverse idea. So
I fucking loved it, and thank you for it. But we both watched it, and it was almost like a statement piece. Like, look, the building got torn down. We can't have fans here because of everything that was going on in 2020. But fuck it, we're still having wrestling. And we're still having fun and good wrestling.
Yep.
And it was like, okay, the world, I'm not going to say it was like this huge, like, the world's going to be okay moment, but it definitely kind of like, okay, there's a little hope. There's a light.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
That's kind of what it felt like to do the shows. I mean, look, everybody went through a lot during the pandemic, and I mean, the pandemic's still going on, but the peak of the pandemic, everybody went through a lot. But the beginning of that year was so rough. I mean, because not only did we have the pandemic, but immediately before that, the Basement East was destroyed by a tornado.
Right.
So, like, from a SUP perspective, when that happened and then the pandemic happened, it was like, can we even have a promotion anymore? Like, is this even possible? We didn't know. Right. So being able to get back in there and do stuff was, I don't know, it was super cool. It was a cool thing. I don't know. I have a lot of cool, I have a lot of great memories in that building that are wrestling related. Probably too many to list in one podcast appearance.
Years.
But it's the fact that the building is even still standing, and the fact that it's something that gets referenced a lot, even people that aren't on every show or that haven't been on shows in a long time, he'd probably get upset I don't know if he would, but Jeremy Ping, who used to be our primary video editor and probably would still be regularly if he wasn't working with AEW all the time. Right. Like when AEW was in Nashville, he put something out about how important the building was to him. Or like O'Shea the other day, O'Shea Edwards on social media, sent out a tweet about the show and just how important the building and stuff has been to his career. And that kind of stuff is really cool, because I think it shows that what we're doing and what we have done over the last 5 years is not just like a flash in the pan, even though it really could have been. And that was, and we honestly had no ambition. It was the most ambitionless exercise probably ever undertaken in pro wrestling. There was in no way did any of us, there's so much stuff that came about as a result that I think none of us could have foreseen. I mean, when we started SUP, I don't think anybody would have guessed that Dom and Ku would end up together in a tag team that would be one of, if not the biggest tag teams on the independents. I don't think there's nobody that would have predicted that at the time. Nobody would have predicted the stuff Brett Ison would go on to do. Nobody would have predicted the stuff that AC Mack has done, even in that early period, or that Jaden Newman is doing now, or that, or nobody would have predicted how big a deal Jesse would become as a ring announcer for us. And the other stuff that he's done, I certainly wouldn't have predicted that my full-time job would be pro wrestling. I can tell you that. if you told me that in at that point in 2017, I would have said, ain't no way. So it's been an interesting journey for sort of many of the pillars of the company, and it's a fun time.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get to Jesse because this being his last show, I do want to talk about that, but we're going to get into the card as well. There's one more thing before we get to the card, and I think it kind of does need to be addressed. Is the last show was Brett Ison's last show, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yes.
So this is kind of like a start of a new era because Brett, for lack of a better term, has kind of been the face of SUP grabs.
I think that's fair. I think,
and so who do you kind of see taking that spot, or is that spot up for grabs and it's just going to be what happens?
So I do think, as I move my phone off camera on camera and then allude to it, I keep
having to do the okay, I'm good.
The height of professionalism. I do think that in many respects you could call Brett the face of SUP. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that, because I think what's more true is that SUP has sort of had pillars than any individual, and I think Brett would probably say that himself. but there's no question that Brett has been a huge part of what SUP has done. And in some ways, I think Brett is more synonymous with SUP than maybe any other wrestler is with any other promotion, other than maybe AC in Action.
Right.
But the I do think it's up for grabs to a degree. You know, when we name the show New Direction, it's like, yes, part of that is that we just really love that Gorilla Biscuit song, but also it was a sort of a literally honest assessment of the reality of where we are with Southern Underground Pro in 2022. I mean, obviously Jesse is leaving as the ring announcer. This will be his last show. Obviously Brett is not around, at least for the time being. I don't know what his long-term plans are, and that's honest God truth. I really don't know.
Right.
There have been a variety of other people that were central to the show in various ways over the course of the years that we haven't seen as much. For, you know, in some cases, somebody like an O'Shea Edwards, for example, it's just that he lives far away now. It's hard to, you know what I mean? Like it's not animus in really any of these cases. It's just logistics or life or whatever. So there've been a lot of that, and a lot of what we're trying to do is infuse the promotion with new blood. I mean, this is the 5-year anniversary show, but realistically, if we're being honest about it, the last 2 years the promotion has existed, and we've been able to run some, but not a ton. You know, we've tried to keep the ball rolling with certain things. You know, we did that show in Indianapolis as part of the collective. We've done a couple joint shows with Action. The title has changed hands outside of the you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
it's not as
We're
if
going to get there on that one.
it's not as if there's been no movement, right? But SUP has existed as much as an idea as it has a promotion in some ways for, I'd say, the last 2 years. And going forward, it's going to be back to more consistently being a promotion. And you know, we've already got another date announced. I mean, we don't have an individual graphic for it, but June 19th, we will also be in the Basement East. So we have the next couple shows that we haven't had that in 2 years. We haven't been able to do that. So in many ways, yeah, it is up for grabs. I don't think, I mean, Ku and Dom are still there, and they're pillars. Jaden has emerged as his path is, I mean, we'll talk about this at length, I think, but his path is, I think, maybe the most fascinating of anybody at SUP. As somebody who was supposed to be on the first show, but was too young to even get in the building. He was actually on the original flyer. A lot of people don't remember that. To now being a guy who's held the title, but never in that room. And he's still, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's a weird dynamic with Jaden. Like, AC is another guy who's kind of been a pillar, but he's the world champ. He's not the Bone Stone champ. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that, and then there's sort of like this cast of characters. Like, we have a lot of the new blood, like we talked about, and we'll talk about more people making their debuts or people who've only maybe been there once before. But then we've got guys like Cole Radrick and Daniel Makabe, who I think people kind of see as SUP guys, at least to one degree or another, but they're not, they're sort of in their own category. So there's a lot of things with SUP that are in flux, but not in a way that I consider bad. I just think it's one of those times. The ground has, you know, a lot changed in the last 2 years, and a lot of what we were able to do was limited, but we still wanted to continue to grow and continue to do things and develop talent and find new things that we wanted to do. And in the process, we're sort of looking at a situation now where if you look at this card and compare it to a card from 2 years ago, you go, God, that's a ton of turnover. Yeah. But it's just because the world has continued to move, and so are we. You know, I have very, very, very high hopes for the show. I think this show is going to deliver in a way that might surprise some people, particularly if people have not seen a lot of these new guys.
Let's talk about Jaden's match first. Let's talk about Jaden Newman versus Dylan McQueen. And I think I might be wrong. There's a lot of wrestling up here, and sometimes it gets fuzzy. I think this is Dylan's SUP debut.
It is, yes.
So yeah, I mean, this is again one of like the pillar guys, Jaden Newman, who, you know, has started as the backup to, I just forgot the guy's name. I
Teddy
had it.
King.
Teddy King. I knew it was Teddy something, and I was about to say Teddy Goods, and that's not right. He started his Teddy King's kind of backup, and now he's probably got one of the bigger pops on the whole show, the last show.
I think so.
Facing Dylan McQueen, who's hot right now, man. What are your thoughts on this match, and what each guy kind of has to prove on this one?
Well, I mean, Jaden had a cup of coffee as the Bone Storm champion. And it's a title that he won in his high school gym, the high school he went to in Chattanooga area, at the Scenic City Rumble. I know it meant a lot to him. Then he promptly went up to Wrestling Open in Worcester, Massachusetts, and he lost the title to Alec Price. And I guess you could argue, like AC's holding the IWTV World title hostage in the South, so to speak. I mean, there's a degree to which Alec Price might be holding that Bone Storm title hostage in the Northeast. Yeah. But the Jaden, in the process of that, I think Jaden has proven himself to an almost shocking degree. I think if you look at guys during the pandemic that have stepped up in their game and sort of improved their lot and their standing, he would be in the very, very upper tier of guys on that list, not just in the context of SUP, but in the context of all of independent wrestling. I think he has really gone from a guy who was like, oh, he's pretty good, he might be good one day, to being like, this is a guy you can put in the ring with the highest level independent wrestlers, and he's going to give you a high level performance.
Yeah.
And I think it's been a journey for him to get there. I think people forget he's still in his early 20s. He's been wrestling since he was 14, but he's still in his early 20s. And so he's got a long way to go still in terms of what he's capable of. But this is a huge match for him. To get that title and then lose it right away and be walking into the Basement East as the guy who lost the title to somebody that won't even be there. That won't even be at the show. It's not scheduled to be at the show. Okay.
Well, you answered my next question.
That's an issue, right? I mean, so that dynamic is there. And Dylan McQueen, man, look, you talk about a guy who's, I feel like the ball's in his court to a degree, like it is with any of these guys. But if you want to talk about Southeastern guys who could be top level stars within the next 2-3 years, Dylan McQueen absolutely is on that list. Yeah. Absolutely is on that list. And to debut at SUP versus Jaden Newman, in 2018, that wouldn't have been that big a deal, if we're being honest. But in 2022, that's a pretty big debut match for Dillon.
Yeah.
And I'm very much looking for its first time ever, even though these guys are both East Tennessee guys. Somehow they've never wrestled each other before in a singles. So it's a first time ever match. And I think it's a high stakes match. And I think it is, of all the matches on the show, I think it's probably the sleeper match. I think if you're looking at this show, I think the tag team title match or Hoodfoot versus Makabe, or maybe even Radrick versus Brandon Williams. I think a lot of people would pick those matches to be like, this is the match that, I don't think, it would not shock me if the consensus best match on the night was of the day, I should say, was McQueen and Jaden. That wouldn't shock me in the least. I would not be even mildly surprised by that.
It feels like Jaden is almost like the measuring stick for new guys.
That's 100% true. Yep.
Yeah, including the guy who I'm about to bring up, who's going to be in the I'm sorry, I have a clip.
Big meaty man slapping meat.
He's going to be in the big meaty men slapping meat special. Isaiah Broner taking on Ron Bass Jr. That's hoss fight defined. That's watching those two.
That is so you look at matches sometimes on a show, and you're like, you get this idea as a fan. Hell, I'm a fan too. Even if I'm in the business, I'm still a fan. Primarily, I'm a fan first, really. But if you get this idea like what it is in your head, right? You're like, oh, this is going to be like this, and like sometimes the match that happens, even if it's good, it wasn't the match that you had in your head. Mm-hmm. So it can be disappointing sometimes, even if it's a good match, right? I think that's fair. Yeah. We've all been there. We know what this match is going to be. They're not going to go in there and start doing like hammerlock, drop down, none of that crap. These two are going to destroy each other. I like if this goes longer than like 7 minutes, like I would be stunned, just because the sheer force of two guys this big that are this big heavy hitters. Like they're going to be going for broke from the jump. I'm really, really excited for this. This is Ronnie's debut in the basement East. Never been there. Big opportunity for him. He's a guy that's really stepped up anytime he's had an opportunity on shows, whether it be TWE or Action or Killer Be Killed or other shows sort of in the region. I think he's really earned this spot. And Broner, man.
Yeah, that's kind of how I explain Broner to people.
Broner is there's guys that you see and you think, oh, this guy could be a top guy, maybe. Like if things go the right way, or there's things that like if Broner doesn't end up a top guy on the independents, the independent wrestling should be abolished. Like he has the intensity to be a top guy. He has the look to be a top guy. He has the presence to be a top guy. He has the ability between the ropes to be a top guy, especially where he is experience level wise. I think that when you factor that in, even more so, it's even more impressive. But still got to beat Ron Bass. You know what I mean? Like you can have all of that and it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. We wanted a Haas fight. What can I say? What can I say?
You've delivered in spades. That would, that was the one. The graphic came up on Twitter. I immediately retweeted it, and then I sent it to my buddy, and he was like, "Do they have enough like bodies around the ring for when the ring falls from how hard these guys are going to hit each other?" I was like, I just hope they have a backup ring, or if we're just going to go full Killer Be Killed from the first show and just
we might go ringless. I don't know.
That's going to be wild. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum from the Haas fight. Let's go like pure technical, and let's talk about, even though Cole Radrick is ultra violent ratty daddy now, and I am here for it. Cole Radrick versus Brandon Williams, a guy I wasn't familiar with before the last show, had a great match with Cabana Man Dan, and Cole Radrick, who had, in my opinion, the best match on the show with Daniel Makabe last round out. Now we got these two going at it. This is just going to be, like I said, the other end of the spectrum, just technical fucking masterclass.
I absolutely think so. I mean, Radrick is sort of an interesting guy because, like, so if you look at independent wrestling over again, I'm a walking, meme filled with cliche and platitudes on this show. I apologize, but like, if you look at the last 2 years, right, and you think about like independent guys over the last 2, maybe 2.5 years, who kind of defined what was considered high level indie wrestling. It's like Lee Moriarty, Daniel Garcia, Wheeler Yuta. Those are like 3 of the guys that, maybe I'm not saying that would be on everybody's list, but I think they'd be on a lot of lists.
Yeah.
And they I mean, we see what they're doing now. And like
things are working.
I think they sort of, in many ways, helped to set the standard during the pandemic for like, this is how to be, like, you can be a great wrestler on the indies, what it looks like. I've told them this privately, and I'll say it publicly. I think Radrick is in a position to be an heir to those guys. He has the ability to be. I'm not saying he is yet, but the thing about being one of those guys is you usually don't. It's like revolutions, right? When somebody's living through a revolution, you don't realize lots of times that you're in a revolution. You look backwards and go, "Oh, yeah, that was a revolution." Like in it, you know what I mean? You're just doing stuff. You're just living. You're just existing in a climate of where something's going on, but you can't quite put your finger on it. I think that's sort of the same situation with Cole. I think he is. He's in the process of becoming one of those guys. And what that means is that the expectation for him every match is higher than it's ever been. Yeah. Right? Like, I mean, let's be real. We're having this conversation right now. 8 months ago, if this match was announced, I don't think your level of excitement would be the same for it.
Probably not.
And that's not a knock on Cole or Brand. It's just a fact. So I think that speaks to kind of what I'm talking about. You know, like he's in the middle of that process. And I think, I don't know, but I think that these guys are going to do something totally different from anything else on the show. Brandon is one of these dudes that I think a lot of people had the perception when he first started because he started later than a lot of guys do. And I think a lot of people had the perception of he's just one of these guys that's going to be happy to be on the show. And that is not true. I think if anything, he has demonstrated a level of work ethic and hustle that far exceeds a lot of guys that are frankly in a better life position to be able to do some stuff than he is, you know. And this is, you know, like on paper, if you like technical wrestling, if you like grappling, I think you're probably going to get a lot of it. But I also think that this is, you know, there's a little bit of an edge to Cole Radrick, like you talked about with the ultra violence. Yeah. And I think there's more of an edge to Brandon Williams than people realize. You know, I don't, he's not this just like flat effect going out that, you know, like there's something there to him. And I expect a lot of intensity in this match. I think this match will be more explosive than people might expect. Even people who are really excited for it because they want to see the technique, which, I mean, I love that stuff too. But I think that this match very well could end up having more explosiveness than people expect. And, you know, if you're Cole, it's like looking at it from a you know, story perspective, depending on how much of the fourth wall you want up or down. He lost to Alex Kane at the close set taping. Great match, but he lost. Mm-hmm. You know, he lost to Makabe at True Believers. Great match, but he lost. Brandon is, by his own admission, not where those guys are right now in their careers. But, you know, like Cole can't really afford to lose from that perspective. And you maybe could argue Brandon can't either, because even though he did debut at the last show at True Believers, you know, there's not a lot of places to go if you lose two straight, even if you lose to two really good wrestlers. Yeah. So it's there's a dynamic to this beyond just, is this a good wrestling match? Which I think realistically it's going to be a good wrestling match.
Yeah. So we talked about Cole and Makabe from the last show, and that brings me to a match. When I saw it, I tweeted, am I an idiot for never thinking that this would be something I'd want to see? Hoodfoot versus Daniel Makabe. Two polar opposite styles. I think Daniel said it, and a lot of people have said it when they saw it, like, styles make fights.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Hoodfoot, who's on another level right now, has made a huge name for himself over the last year. A lot of it in SUP has been part of Zero X Lucci. Or Zero fucking Lucci. With Chase Holiday. But on this huge singles tear too, and then Daniel, who I have said on this show before, I said it when we had Jesse on, I think Daniel's the best technical wrestler on the planet. I fully believe that. If he's not, he's right up there.
He doesn't think he is, but I think he is. So
Daniel just seems like the kind of guy. Like I told him how great
he would argue it's Gresham, and I can't really argue with that on merit, but I can't argue against him and won't.
I went up to him and I told him how great I thought his match was with Cole after True Believers, and he just it's like he doesn't expect praise or like he doesn't know how to take it. Like he was like, "Oh, okay, thank you." And I was like, "Do you not realize you're amazing? That's somehow makes you even cooler in my world." So what was the thought process in the group chat that made this happen?
Sometimes you gotta do weird shit, man.
Yeah.
So like, let's break it down. Let's totally tear down the fourth wall for the purposes of this discussion here. We knew we had Daniel booked, and we were looking at certain options on the table. And there were some things that we want to do, to have some surprises and a little bit of variation on the show, and but we wanted to put Daniel's coming a long way for this. Like he lives in British Columbia. This is not like he's not coming 2 hours. So like for him to come in and he's just doing this show. It's not like he's got like a weekend of other stuff. He's wrestling Charlie Haas on Friday night for Prestige, and then on Saturday he's flying to Nashville. So nice. And he'll be there Sunday morning. So we wanted to make sure that it was something that was worth everybody's while. And when I think about guys and like that are just my favorite guys to watch, right? Two of the first guys on that list are Daniel Makabe and Hoodfoot.
Right.
They would be certainly both in the top 10 and probably in the top 5 of guys on the indies that that I enjoy personally watching. So when the opportunity becomes available to do it, I don't know. It just
you gotta fucking take advantage.
It's a weird match, but it's also, we try to book matches at SUP on every show, and you probably noticed this if you go back. On every show, we try to have at least one match where it's like, oh, nobody else would book this. Because that has to, even if you have the best possible versions of matches, or the best possible talent, if you're just booking them the exact same way everybody else would, even with the atmosphere being different, even with the sort of way the flow of the show being different, except you still need that variation. And there's nobody else that's going to book Daniel Makabe versus Hoodfoot. That's not a match you will see anywhere else. You wouldn't even see that anywhere else on shows I'm involved with. Like I love action. I help book action with Matt. We're not going to book that match there. We're just not. Right. Like that's a match that only, like, I wouldn't say it only works in the Basement East, but it's suited for the Basement East.
Right.
And we'll see what we get. I mean, people forget, like, for all the talk about, like, oh my God, Hoodfoot, what a weird Styles match. I mean, it is in some ways, but like, Daniel's a bigger guy than people give him credit for. He's like 6'2", 6'3". He's a tall guy. Like, Hoodfoot was the Paradigm Pros, I believe, their first heavy hitters champion, which was sort of their UWFI rules thing, which is a version of shoot style. Now, granted, he relied primarily on strikes, not grappling, but the point is, like, I think there's a Venn diagram with a little bit more overlap in terms of what they do than people might initially think if you were just looking at it dead cold. And some of the appeal of this match is, what the hell is this even going to look like? Like, that's the appeal of it. But they're both so good wrestlers, such good wrestlers, and wrestlers that are so exciting and interesting and fresh in a lot of ways that I think sometimes when you have a match that looks like that on paper, it's like, oh God,
Right.
you know, like what is this going to But in this case, it's the exact opposite. It's like, holy cow, what is this going to look like? And it makes you excited.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, I mean, this one blew up pretty well on social media when we announced it. So
Yeah, I think if anybody, who's listening to this show that is going to be seeing Hoodfoot for the first time outside of a deathmatch environment, just go watch Hoodfoot versus Alex K from Killer Be Killed
oh yeah.
and realize that it's the same guy. Like,
Oh yeah.
he might bleed buckets, but he will also drop you on your friggin' head.
He's much more versatile than people give him credit for. And as a presence, I think he's very underrated as a
Yeah.
presence. I think there are not very many guys. I'll put it this way without revealing things I shouldn't. As somebody who does work for IWTV, I kind of have an idea of what wrestlers have buzz that is astroturfed horseshit,
Right.
to be blunt.
Yeah.
And what wrestlers have buzz that is earned and is reflected in the reality of what they are able to do for the promotions that they work for. And both Hoodfoot and Makabe are in that group. Hoodfoot especially, I think, is a guy where his buzz is like, it's a real thing. It reflects a real sort of cult following and status that is sort of the best of independent wrestling and what makes independent wrestling so great. And yeah, this match is going to be super fun to do commentary for.
Oh,
I have no clue what to expect.
I'm there for it. Like, it's gonna be wild. Another match on the card that I don't think it's getting the buzz that it should is Billy Tipton versus Adam Priest. And I mean, it's a stacked friggin' card. I mean, something inevitably is going to kind of fall through the cracks in terms of like the buzz. But I mean, this is that Tennessee Alabama showdown. I mean, it sucks too because I want to like Adam Priest, but I can't because I bleed orange. So it's going to be rough. But I think this one, like, it doesn't have the buzz, but this is another kind of sleeper. Maybe I don't want to go so far as say match of the night because there's so much on there that could be, but this is going to be a really good one. And this is also Billy Tipton's SUP debut.
Correct.
I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, again, another big debut on the show. What do people need to know about Billy Tipton going into the shows? I feel like Adam Priest is kind of a known commodity to a lot of the people that listen to this show or watch the show.
Yeah, Priest is an asshole, but he's our asshole. Tipton.
I mean, he's a Bama fan. What do you expect?
Well, no comment on that. But Tipton is. So Billy Tipton is one of these guys where the first time I saw him, I was like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know if this is going to work. And he was pretty green the first time I saw him. And we talked that night, and he asked me for my thoughts on a match. This was at TWE. And I gave them to him. And I saw that this was somebody who really wanted to be better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not just like, I want to be good as I define it, but I want to be, which that's very important. A lot of guys never get that. A lot of guys in wrestling, they want to be good as they define it. Well, there's nothing really wrong with that either. But if you want to get to the next level and you're defining good in a way that means you have, that other people are like, what? Then it doesn't. You can wrestle for yourself. That's great, but you're shutting yourself out. Right. Tipton, I think, really wants it. I think he's improved a lot. He has the drive. He logs the miles.
Mm-hmm.
He does the things you need to do to get better. From where he was when I first saw him to where he is now, the range of improvement is marked and clear. He's now a guy that I have no problem putting in the ring with Adam Priest on a live stream at SUP. And when I first saw him, I would have thought, I can't even put him in front of a Basement East crowd because they will eat him alive. Mm-hmm. And now I have no worry about it at all. I think they're going to have a very, very good match. Priest is absolutely somebody to watch. He's like an on the right. I think Priest, you say that people, and I'm sure people familiar with this podcast are familiar, but it's also like, I think he still sort of slides under the radar. I don't like, he is one of the best wrestlers on the indies. He is, period. And by the way, in the business, most everybody agrees with that. That's not a controversial position inside of the independent wrestling business. Pretty much everybody is of the opinion that Priest is one of the better guys out there.
Mhm.
And if you look at who he's been in the ring with over the course of the last year and a half, it's pretty much a who's who of guys. He very quietly has had matches with people like Yuta, Ku, Makowski, obviously Derek Neal, who I think is incredible. Jonathan Gresham multiple times. Like, he's very quietly wrestled Anthony Henry, like a lot of the stalwarts and a lot of really great wrestlers, and has been at their level all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, he just sort of has done it. And I think a lot of people haven't realized that. I think slowly that realization is starting to dawn on people, just maybe in the last few months. And what I think that means is that Priest is in a position to hit the stratosphere, and Tipton is in a position to be like, say, I belong in here with somebody who's recognized as one of the best.
Right.
And anytime you have a match like that on paper, where you have people that are accelerating, but they're accelerating at different speeds, which means that their motivations are a little bit different, I think it's a true sink or swim opportunity for Billy Tipton here. It really, really, really is.
Yeah.
Because if you can't tear it down with Adam Priest, it doesn't matter to me whether the match is 4 minutes or 40 minutes. If you can't tear it down with Adam Priest, you're not ready.
Yeah.
So we're gonna find out if Tennessee Sunshine's ready. You know, like, we're gonna find out.
I mean, Adam had, I'm not gonna say my favorite match because it's on the same card as AC Mack and Alex Shelley, but my second favorite match at Southeast First.
Match was great.
And it was a match, like, my wife watched the show with me, and she was even like at the end. And my wife is like my scale, because she likes wrestling just enough to tell me if she hates it. You know what I mean?
Oh, you need guys like that. Are women like that in this case?
Yeah. And she was like, that was really fucking good. And I was like, I know, right? Because I love wrestling. I'll watch a crappy match and find one good punch and figure I was like, at least there was a victory somewhere in there. But yeah, when she's impressed, I'm gonna take it. Before we get to the tag title match, there is one kind of big story on the show that we haven't really gotten to yet. That's the fact that it's Jesse's last show.
Yes.
We've had Jesse on. I've known Jesse for years, just from being Nashville wrestling. Talk a little about Jesse's impact on SUP. You don't have to give away any like plans for who the new ring announcer is, although, I'm here. But just talk about Jesse's impact on SUP and what Jesse's meant, because we talked about Brett being the face earlier, but arguably Jesse could take that same spot.
I don't like that he's leaving. But I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Jesse's path and relationship with pro wrestling, like everybody else's, has been different.
Mm-hmm.
And with the things he's finding success with in his life and where his passions are right now in his life, and just where he stands with SUP, in the early days of SUP, there was, and I'm not speaking out of school, this is stuff that he would probably say himself. In the early days of SUP, it was very much Jesse and Ku and Brittany and me making a lot of decisions when it came to booking. And then there became a point where Jesse really didn't want to do as much of that. He would, again, not speaking out of school, this is by his own admission.
Mm-hmm.
He just had other stuff going on, wasn't really in, and he kind of pulled back from doing that by his choice. And I think that at that point, he still loved doing the shows. He still enjoyed being a part of the shows. It was still something that got his adrenaline going, as we see, that got him fired up. But let's just be honest, man. Like, the pandemic and everything that's happened in the last couple of years has really recalibrated a lot of how people relate to hobbies, life, career goals, where you're investing your time. You know what I mean? Like, you almost by some necessity, you almost didn't even have a choice. Like, and I think it just got to a point where, it's not even anything so this is a weird comparison, but I'm going to make this comparison. So from 2016 through 2019, I guess it was, for all those years, then there was the year off. Yeah. I booked the Scenic City Invitational with Scott Hensley and Josh Massey, and then with Scott Hensley and Matt Griffin for that last year prior. And I think they would all concede that the person who probably dedicated the most time in their life to that out of all of us was me. Mm-hmm. I think all of them would concede that, in terms of just like day to day, the level of emotional, mental investment work, for most of that period. Maybe not for all of it, but for the bulk of it, if you're looking at cumulatively, was me. And when the pandemic happened and everything, like, I started to look at the lay of the land, and it wasn't any slight on Scott or Matt, but we had a conversation, and it was just like, if I'm going to continue doing it, like, this is the only way I really think I can continue doing it. And they were like, I don't think we want to do that. And I completely understood, and we went our separate ways. I still do commentary for the shows. I still really enjoy being a part of it. It'll always be super important for me, because that's really what got me in, even more so than SUP in some ways, with Scenic City. And I think it's kind of a similar thing with Jesse. Like, there never was a conversation with him where it was like, I want to do this, and we're going in different. That never happened. I don't want to misrepresent that, but it's like a similar thing. It's like, this is that was the natural endpoint for me with Scenic City, was when the pandemic hit. And I think for him, for whatever reason, some of which he's articulated, this is the natural endpoint for him at SUP. And it's not like we've never had different ring announcers. I don't think there's anybody who's going to be able to do it like him. I mean, that's not a knock on anybody else. It's just, he's got a style and a way of doing things that's very well suited to what we do. So we're going to have to make some considerations about how we want to do that, because I just don't think that there's anybody that can do it like him. But he's been an important part from the very beginning. It wouldn't exist. I mean, the bottom line is, if it wasn't for the Kick Out at 2 podcast, which was Jesse's podcast with Brittany and the Wiltman, and them befriending Koo through that, and through going to AWE shows of all things and things of that nature years ago, and then me meeting them there, and sort of like, to a degree, also getting to know each other better through like Scenic City related stuff. None of this happens. So you can't subtract, like, if you take Jesse out of the picture, there is no SUP.
Right.
Period. If you take Jesse and Brittany out of the picture, there's no, it doesn't exist. It's not a thing that's real. Like, it only existed because of them. And I'm very, very cognizant of that. And I don't love that he doesn't want to do this, at least right now. And I don't even really want to speak for him on that, because I don't know that it's so much that he doesn't want to, so much as that he feels like it's not a primary passion for him right now, and he'd rather that go to somebody who does have a passion for it. Right. And I get that. I respect that. I love him. And we would not have been able to do all this stuff without him. It is going to be a new direction, so to speak, in the post Jesse world as well, from that perspective. But it's like anything, man. Like, if you're there's anything that lasts long enough to matter is going to have situations like this.
Right.
There's going to be a day at some point where SUP is, it's somebody that's a major part. Can't, like, I'm not making a one-to-one comparison to Jesse here because it's not the same, but Doug Markham reffed every show for the longest time. Doug and Jesse, for a long time, myself, Doug, Jesse, and Brett were the only people that were at every SUP show. Right. Then slowly each of us fell off that list, right? Slowly each of us fell off that list to the point where none of us were on it. But for a long time, those were the four guys that were on every SUP show, was us.
Right.
And now Doug, we don't have Doug at SUP. So it's a constant process, and it is what it is. I miss Jesse when he moved out of the booth. I love doing commentary with him. To this day, and this is not a knock on Mose, who I love to death, and I think we were a great team. But to this day, if you ask me who my favorite person to do commentary with ever was, it's Jesse. So and he knows that. I've told him that before. But that's just how it goes. There's ebbs and flows with stuff like this, and if he ever wanted to come back or be involved in some capacity again, I mean, he's part of the collaboration. So that's how I look at it. I don't know that this is a closed door. Certainly it isn't for me, but it's just he's walking through a different door right now, and where we go, we'll see. I think I'll tell you flat out, I haven't even thought about another ring announcer. And for one primary reason, I hate the idea of having somebody in that spot before he's finished up. I can't stand it. It's a personal thing for me. Like, I don't like the idea of that. Right. Once he's finished up, we'll start thinking about it. But until he's finished up, it's his job. That's how I think about it.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, he's, like I said, that voice is so, like, that's just the voice you think of when you think of SUP. So
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Definitely. Well, on to happier things.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, we talked about brutal. We've talked about technical. Like, this is going to have a little bit of all of that. The tag team title match, Violence is Forever, the best tag team on the Indies today. I think you're hard-pressed to argue that. Versus Suplex Science, Damian Tanger and Alex Kane. Alex Kane, who we've had on the show before, great guy.
He's all right.
I like him. Right.
Don't tell me.
Robbie's not here to piss him off like he did that night. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, this was set up out of the Gauntlet.
Incarnation Gauntlet.
Yeah, I kept wanting to call it the Infinity Gauntlet, and I knew that was wrong. And I'm like, I'm just not gonna say it. Dude, thoughts on this match going into it, and is this finally the one? Is this finally the team that can take down the Goats?
So this show is not up on IWTV yet, but I think it will be early next week, the Last Action show, which had Violence is Forever versus the Skulk, which was a barn burner, let me tell you. I mentioned that to say that I think Violence is Forever is very quietly on, like, I actually don't know how quiet it is because they're winning titles left and right. But I think the quality of their matches, I think, sometimes gets slept on because people just see the gold and the accolades first. Mm-hmm. But these guys are having great matches left and right. And I think that's something that really needs to be pointed to, because they would tell you this themselves. There's nobody who rips Dom and Koo's matches apart more than me. I am harder on them than anybody. And if I think their match sucked, they're going to hear it, period. And there have been many times where I was like, oh, what are they doing? They've hit a level right now that it's tag team wrestling. It's what tag team wrestling is. And Suplex Science, though, I'll say this. I don't think there's ever been a challenger since we've had the tag belts where it felt like Dom and Ku could lose. I think this is the first time. I think this is the first time, and that's not a knock on anybody else, but I think this is the first. That's not a knock on Hoodfoot and Chase. It's like, I don't want to disrespect those guys, but this is the first time where I really feel like, okay, Suplex Science is a team that feels like they could win.
Right.
Kane is a beast. Tangra's crazy underrated and can flat out go. Like, I mean, he's probably had more sleeper good to great matches on the indies during the pandemic era than anybody, as far as guys who've just had like matches that like people don't even realize how good they are. Like, he's been incredible. Style wise, I think this is an interesting match because you've got both sides sort of have like a high level of technical ability, harder hitter. You know what I mean? Like, this is a earned fight. Like you said, the Kane won the Incarnation Gauntlet, beating Tangra as the last guy in it, and then said, "You're my guy. We trained together. You know what I mean? Like, let's go after the tag belts." And it's taken us a while to get to that match, but we've got that match now on a live stream on Easter Sunday on the 5-year anniversary show. It just feels like there's an element here where you could see a changing of the guard. Yes, I agree that it feels that way, and of course, we want you to feel that way.
Yeah,
but sometimes when you're in the storytelling business, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you really want people to believe, and I really feel like if you're in the building on Sunday when both teams are standing in the ring and Jesse's doing those intros, it's going to feel like a pick 'em. It's not going to feel like somebody's a favorite or an underdog. It's going to feel like a pick 'em. And it is a pick 'em. I think that this will probably be, and I love the match with Hoodfoot and Chase, but I think, no pressure to these guys, but I think this really has potential to be the best tag match that's ever happened in that building. And, barring something strange, even though Dom and especially Ku will hate this, it's going to be the main event. I mean, I like, barring something strange, and you've got the wild card because AC is going to be there.
Yeah.
But barring something strange, this will go on last. Because I don't think there's anything else on this show that can follow the total package of what this is going to be. And when it comes to setting up the card at the end of the day, love Dom, Ku, Brittany, Jesse, love all of them. But I think they would tell you this. When it comes to placing the card in order, I have the final say because I'll bitch more than anybody else if I don't like it. Everybody else will just be like, fine, whatever, he can do it. But unless something radical changes, this will be our main event. The tag team titles on the line.
I mean, that was when I saw the card. I was immediately drawn to like, well, there's your main event. Everything else is going to be a banger, but that's the one. I mean, after the Hoodfoot and Chase match, and the Hoodfoot and Chase match, not to go too far, not to go back to where we're talking forward, but that was right when Dom had kind of made like I think I'm going to step away.
Oh, yeah.
And that audible, like, everybody was like, okay, they're going to drop the belts to Hoodfoot and Chase. It was that like natural, like, wrestling fans always know what's going to happen before it happens. And everybody's like, okay, this is a good team for them to drop to. And then that audible, like, pause right after the fucking Chasing the Dragon, and everybody was like, wait a minute, hold on. And then the tear starts. Like, then the violence is forever. Like, hey,
totally,
you know what?
Level.
Let's just go out and be the best tag team in the world for another year.
So they're the 3-time IWTV Independent Wrestling Tag Team of the Year. By the way, that's a shoot award. I know because I'm the one who counts the friggin' votes.
I'm
And
sorry.
there's a lot of votes. People have asked me before, like, what do you have, like a few hundred votes? Try thousands of votes.
Oh yeah.
there's a lot of votes that get cast for this. And Dom and Ku are the only people who have won an award back to back, let alone 3 times.
Yeah.
You like, they've won it 3 straight. Okay. So that's a big deal. But also, C4 tag team champions now, which is arguably the most significant promotion in Canada, certainly one of the most significant promotions in Canada. Black Label Pro tag team champions, which is arguably the most significant promotion in the Midwest, certainly one of the most significant promotions in the Midwest. Everybody would agree with that.
Yeah.
And the Action and SUP tag team champions, which I'm biased, but to my mind, the 2 most important promotions in the Southeast.
Yeah.
So, like, it. You tell me, like, that, like, they call themselves the final bosses now. They are the standard on the independents when it comes to tag team wrestling.
Yeah.
If you haven't wrestled them yet, and you're a tag team on the indies, we don't know how good you are yet. We don't know. And, like, that's one of the reasons, like, when I started putting together the card for Uncharted Territory, starting in May, live on IWTV, 8 p.m. from the TW Arena in Chattanooga, Tennessee. But when I started putting those cards together, like, I wanted to go out and find who are one of the best tag teams that I know of that have not wrestled Dom and Ku yet. And that's why I went with Culture Inc. Because I believe Eli and Malik are a damn good tag team, and they've never wrestled them yet. And we're going to see, am I right that they're a damn good tag team or not? Because if you can't hang with them, you're not good. I'm sorry. Like, that is the standard right now in the independents.
I'm down for that. I also so glad that the Southeast is finally, like, I when we had AC Mac on after he won the belt, I was like, dude, I'm just so glad, like, we're not that there's anything wrong with this, but that we're not just Memphis anymore.
Dude, I love Memphis wrestling. It's my favorite wrestling in the world. When people ask me who I think the best commentator is ever, I say Lance Russell. I don't even think it's close.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm glad you mentioned this, because this is a good tie-in that rounds everything out. Kind of when SUP started, a big part of the vision, and especially what the vision became once we realized we could actually do this after the first show, a big part of what the vision became was, everybody who was running in the South, with the exception perhaps of PWX, to be fair to them, and some other shows that were sort of they'd last for a little while and they'd stop. Rampage in South Florida was a great example, or South Georgia was a great example of this. People had this very antiquated, dated mentality, and they didn't understand how to be relevant and how to establish a network and a platform and an identity and a movement for wrestling in the Southeast that could be something that people outside of the Southeast would give a damn about. You still would run into people who were really good wrestlers that had this mentality, almost like they thought Vince Jr. was going to see somebody who took a YouTube video that they uploaded on landscape mode from their phone, and like, you're going to get signed that way. I mean, there was a lot of delusion with guys who just didn't have any clue. And I do think that ultimately there's still different paths for everybody. But a big part of what SUP was always about from the very beginning was trying to develop a network and be part of a network and a culture in the Southeast that could make it so that there was no more great talent from the South that slipped through the cracks because the promoters and the bookers didn't understand how to be part of the zeitgeist. We did not, that had to change. And I to me, the most important thing that SUP has done in 5 years has been a part of that change.
Yeah.
That is, I'm not saying we led it. I'm not saying we're the most important part, but we've been a part of it. That's all I wanted, was to be a part of something that changed that, so that we didn't have a situation anymore. And I always point to this guy, and he's a guy that probably a lot of people won't know, but that's kind of the point. I didn't want to ever have a situation again where you had somebody that was the talent level of somebody like Sean Tempers, who I thought was one of the best guys in the Southeast for years and years and years and years. But so much of his time was wasted or effectively wasted because you couldn't find the shows, even if you wanted to find them. There was no networking opportunities on these shows to get to bigger places and bigger platforms. I never wanted to be, guys like Sean Tempers, guys like Drew Haskins, who's a Middle Tennessee guy, is another example of this.
Known Drew Haskins.
I never wanted, those guys were so good, but so much of their history is lost, and I never wanted that to happen again. And so much of what we do at SUP is trying to make sure that like the guys from this region show that they can compete at the top level and can get it done at the top level against top level guys and can carry the torch and wave the flag for this whole section of the United States. And I think by and large, SUP has been a valuable contributor to that change. And that's really a big part of what we've tried to do. So,
dude, I mean, I've been watching since the beginning. It's been a crazy journey, and that journey continues this Sunday live from the Basement East on IWTV at 2 p.m.
2 p.m. Central, 3
2
p.m.
my
Eastern.
time.
Yep. I'm in Chattanooga, so I'm an Eastern guy. I'm just over the Eastern line.
I just drove through there going to Atlanta last weekend and then missed the action show. It's a whole thing. Anyway, but dude, it's been a pleasure to have you on. And tentatively, maybe we pencil it in for June.
I would love to come back in June. You can go ahead and put it on the books. We'll make it work if you want to do it.
Hey, hey, Southern Underground Pro, New Direction, presented by your boys of the Uncut Wrestling Podcast.
That's right. I want to thank the Uncut Wrestling Podcast and the Bald Monkeys, our two standout sponsors for this show. I truly really appreciate it. SUP is a true DIY show. It is a show that is admittedly run on a shoestring and has been from day one. It is also the only wrestling show that I'm involved with at this point that I don't take money from ever. I don't take a penny from this. This is purely a passion project for me. This is what I do with my friends because I love wrestling. And the support we get, sponsorships and the partnerships we have with you guys, the Monkeys, other people in the past as well, hopefully more in the future, is literally how we run shows. If we don't have the support, we cannot do it. So I thank you guys immensely, both for the platform to run down the card tonight, but also for the broader support and sponsorship. And I hope we can continue this arrangement in the future, but more importantly, just keep supporting the good guys in independent wrestling, because there are some of us that are really trying to build something cool and special.
Hey, and it's always Southeast first. So
amen.
Got to do it. Dillon, it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I'll see you Sunday.
See you there.
I'm sure you might be there.
Yeah, it might be. We'll see how it goes.
Have a good one, man. That was fun. I did it all by myself. Suck it, Matt and Robbie. Oh, God, they're going to yell at me. Anyway, for Dylan Hales, your boy, the Ace, Nick White, I'll be back next week. I will have co-hosts. We have a special guest co-host next week. You know him from the Indy movement. It's right up there. He makes all our videos. He's already made the video for next week, and it's sick. For our guest next week, straight out of House of Glory Wrestling, Smiley the Psycho Lucha will be on. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Uncut Wrestling Podcast. Robbie's not here, so it's 1, 2 clicks.